Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am ready. सर आवाज थोडासा इको इको होतोय, प्लीज. हा, आता आता आला सर व्यवस्थित. ओके सर, ओके. सुस्वागतम. पद्मशाली शिक्षण संस्था संचलित AR बुर्ला महिला वरिष्ठ महाविद्यालयाच्या IQAC आणि रिसर्च प्रमोशन कमिटीच्या वतीनं संपन्न होत असलेला 30 डेज ऑनलाईन सर्टिफिकेट कोर्स इन बेसिक्स ऑफ रिसर्च अँड अकॅडमिक इंटिग्रिटी या थीम खाली अत्यंत दर्जेदार असा हा आपला सर्टिफिकेट कोर्सचा आजचा तिसरा दिवस. मी ऑनलाईन प्लॅटफॉर्मवर उपस्थित आमच्या महाविद्यालयाचे प्राचार्य आदरणीय डॉक्टर राजेंद्रजी शेंडगे सर, आजच्या प्रमुख वक्त्या AR बुर्ला महिला महाविद्यालयाच्या इंग्रजी प्रमुख डॉक्टर एनी जॉन मॅडम, ज्यांच्या मार्गदर्शनाचा आणि अनुभवाचा आपण गेले 5 दिवस आपण बहुमोल असा जो आपल्याला मार्गदर्शन मिळतोय, असे आदरणीय डॉक्टर हना जगताप सर, डॉक्टर प्रभाकर कोळेकर सर, डॉक्टर अश्विन बोंदार्डे सर आणि या सर्टिफिकेट कोर्सचे कोऑर्डिनेटर, ज्यांच्यामुळे हा 30 दिवसाचा कोर्स आपल्या सगळ्यांच्याच लक्षातही राहील आणि आपल्या ज्ञानात बहुमोल अशी भर पण पडणार आहे, असे कोऑर्डिनेटर डॉक्टर पंचप्पा वाघमारे सर आणि आपण सर्वजण संशोधक विद्यार्थी, मी आपणा सर्वांचं मनापासून स्वागत करते. आजचा दिवस 6वा. आजच्या सत्राच्या प्रमुख वक्त्या आहेत डॉक्टर एनी जॉन मॅडम. त्यांचा आजचा विषय आहे हाऊ टू प्रिपेअर रिसर्च प्रपोजल. डॉक्टर एनी जॉन मॅडमचा मी थोडक्यात परिचय करून देते. प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर एनी जॉन मॅडम या सध्या AR बुर्ला महिला वरिष्ठ महाविद्यालय येथे इंग्रजी विभागाच्या प्रमुख म्हणून गेल्या 30 वर्षापासून कार्यरत आहेत. इंग्रजीवरती प्रचंड प्रभुत्व असलेल्या डॉक्टर एनी जॉन मॅडम यांचं शिक्षण MA इन इंग्लिश, मॅडमना MA मध्ये गोल्ड मेडलिस्ट असलेल्या मॅडमना MA इंग्रजी यामध्ये सर्वाधिक गुण प्राप्त केल्याबद्दल स्वर्गीय बंदो गोपाल कदम सुवर्ण पदकाने मॅडमना सन्मानित करण्यात आलं होतं. त्यांचं शिक्षण परत MA इन कम्युनिकेशन, डिप्लोमा इन हायर एज्युकेशन, MA इन सोशॉलॉजी, MBA ही पदवी मॅडमना ह्युमन रिसोर्स मॅनेजमेंटमध्ये त्यांनी ही पदवी संपादन केली. मॅडमचा संशोधनाचा व्यासंग प्रचंड आहे. विशेष नमूद करावयाची बाब म्हणजे मॅडमचे एकूण अभ्यास विषयक जवळजवळ 42 पुस्तके प्रकाशित झालेले आहेत आणि आणखीन 3 ते 4 पुस्तकांचं मॅडमचं लिखाण चालू आहे. नॅशनल आणि इंटरनॅशनल जर्नल्समध्ये जवळजवळ 55 ते 60 इतकी शोध निबंध मॅडमची प्रकाशित झालेली आहेत. मॅडम महाराष्ट्रातील विविध विद्यापीठांमध्ये रिसोर्स पर्सन म्हणून, PhDच्या रेफरी म्हणून आणि सब्जेक्ट एक्सपर्ट म्हणून आमंत्रित असतात. मॅडम पुण्यश्लोक अहिल्यादेवी होळकर सोलापूर विद्यापीठाच्या इंग्रजीच्या गाईड आहेत. त्यांच्या मार्गदर्शनाखाली आतापर्यंत 8 ते 9 विद्यार्थ्यांना PhD ही पदवी प्राप्त झालेली आहे. मॅडम सध्या सोलापूर विद्यापीठाच्या विविध मंडळावरती कार्यरत आहेत. मॅडम सध्या बोर्ड ऑफ स्टडीच्या चेअरमन म्हणून आहेत. अत्यंत दर्जेदार सिलेबस सेटअप करून जेणेकरून इंग्रजी विषयाचा वैविध्यपूर्ण अभ्यासक्रमाचा विद्यार्थ्यांना कसा लाभ होईल यासाठी त्या सतत प्रयत्नशील असतात. त्या मेंबर ऑफ अकॅडमिक काउन्सिलच्या सदस्य आहेत, चेअरपर्सन ऑफ लॅप्सेस कमिटी. याशिवाय त्या सद्गुरू गाडगे महाराज कॉलेज ऑफ कराड आणि तुळजाराम चतुर्चंद कॉलेज ऑफ बारामती येथील इंग्रजी विषयाच्या अभ्यास मंडळावरती कार्यरत आहेत. शिवाजी युनिव्हर्सिटी इंग्रजी टीचर्स असोसिएशन व सोलापूर इंग्लिश टीचर्स असोसिएशनच्या मॅडम आजीवन सभासद आहेत. मराठी भाषेला एक अवीट गोडवा आहे असं आपण म्हणतो, परंतु इंग्रजी भाषा ही किती डेकोरेटिव्ह, ज्याला आपण फ्लॉवरी असू शकते, हे आपल्याला मॅडमनी लिहिलेल्या बियॉन्ड द हॉरिझॉन कविता संग्रह जर आपण वाचला तर आपल्याला लक्षात येईल आणि समजून पण येईल. त्यांच्या या अभ्यासू व्यक्तिमत्वाला दाद म्हणून आणि त्यांचा यथोचित सन्मान म्हणून मॅडमना पुणे येथील हिरकणी गौरव पुरस्काराने मॅडम सन्मानित करण्यात आलेलं होतं. रोटरी क्लब ऑफ सोलापूर कडून व्होकेशनल अवॉर्ड ऑफ द इयर, लोकमत सखी मंच अवॉर्ड, लायन्स क्लब सोलापूर यांच्या वतीनं प्राचार्य मंगळवेडेकर आदर्श शिक्षक पुरस्कार, फेडरेशन ऑफ ऑल मायनॉरिटी एज्युकेशन ऑर्गनायझेशन सोलापूर यांच्याकडून आयडियल टीचर अवॉर्ड. विशेष बाब म्हणजे अत्यंत मानाचा असा 2016 साली सोलापूर विद्यापीठाचा बेस्ट टीचर अवॉर्ड आणि आत्ताच म्हणजे आंतरराष्ट्रीय महिला जागतिक दिनाच्या पूर्वसंध्येला 2022 या वर्षासाठी मॅडमना कैलासवासी अव्वाबाई वाडिया कर्तृत्वशालिनी स्मृती पुरस्कार नुकताच मॅडमना जाहीर झालेला आहे. आपण सगळेजण मॅडमचं मनापासून त्यांचं अभिनंदन करूयात. अशा या बहुआयामी आणि अभ्यासू व्यक्तिमत्व असलेल्या डॉक्टर एनी जॉन मॅडमचं मी परत एकदा या ऑनलाईन प्लॅटफॉर्मवरती मनापासून स्वागत करते. धन्यवाद अँड ओव्हर टू यू डॉक्टर एनी जॉन मॅडम.
थँक्यू मॅडम. आवाज येते?
हो हो येतोय मॅडम.
One moment. Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it visible now?
Yes.
Yeah, my PPT presentation, it's visible, no? Okay. Shall I begin, sir? Okay, at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Waghmare, sir, for giving me this opportunity to speak to you about research methodology. I would like to thank Dr. Rajendra madam for all her wonderful words about me. And I welcome you, all research scholars, to this session. I know for the last 5 days you have been enjoying all the scholarly presentations by different resource persons. Now, there was a demand from a number of students, that is, number of research scholars, regarding how to prepare a research proposal. Now, a research proposal, you can also say it's a synopsis. It's something that you propose to do. When you say proposal, it is something that you propose to do in your research. So the title of my talk or my presentation today is how to prepare your synopsis or your research proposal. That is your initial. Now, this is your first proposal. That is before you begin your actual research work. Now, other than this, there is a final synopsis that you submit along with your thesis. Now, that will be a little different from this. Now, let us look at our research proposal. The students of PET 7, they have already submitted this, but then maybe you must have submitted it under some pressure, or maybe, it must have been a quick process. Now, for the students of the 8th PET, I think this would be quite useful, because what I saw in our CRC meeting was that many of you came without a proposal. Many of you did not even have a topic. You were quite blank about what to do. It's very necessary that when you come for your presentation, or when you come for this CRC meetings, you have to be very clear about what you're going to do, or at least you should have an initial idea about what you propose to do. Now, before we start, I would just like to draw your attention to the fact. Let's just see very briefly. I think the last 5 days you've been dealing with research and research methodology, so you all know what is research. But just let's look at what is research. Now, the dictionary defines research as a systematic investigation into and the study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusions. Now, here let us focus on certain words. The first one is, it is a systematic investigation. Now, when you say it is a systematic investigation, it calls for an activity which involves presenting a plan. It's a prospective plan, that is a plan for the future. You have in mind a plan, and to make this plan effective, you have to incorporate a lot of data. So it goes into saying that you have to go for data collection, and once you collect them, you have to analyze them. And this analysis of your data helps you to answer every question that you have in your mind. And when you talk about investigation, it has to be systematic. When you say systematic, it has to be well planned and it has to be within the framework of research. The second important word there is you have to establish facts. Now, when you try to establish something as true, when you say something is genuine, when you say something is authentic, then you need to prove, you need to give evidence and to show facts. You need facts with you is true. And finally, you reach the word, it does not say only conclusion, it says new conclusions. And reaching new conclusion calls for a judgment or it calls for a decision making. But this is possible only after spending a number of days, a number of months, maybe few years also into this process called research. So when you say research, now I have already, spoken about this to my research, colleagues or my students. When I say research, although it is a word, I always tell them use a hyphen between re and search. Actually, research is a single word, but just for our convenience, if we say re hyphen and search, then it means research, that is to search again and again. It only means that research is not a discovery. It's already there. What we have to do is re-investigate, re-establish, re-study, re-reach. Now this re means again and again, again and again. And when you say again and again, it only means that you are adding new perspectives to it. It means to say that you are looking at it from your point of view. It means to say that, somebody must have already studied this particular aspect or this particular theme or issue, but you are going to add more dimensions to that particular topic. The writer must have written it from his perspective, but you are going to restudy it from your perspective. And that word there says new conclusion, which means there should be something of an innovation. There should be something of a novelty. Now, as I told you, being members on the research committee, very often we come across students who work on some research, topic, but it's more or less a summary. For example, when I talk from the point of view of literature, some students, they take up some writer, they take some few novels, they read it, or they keep, a number of books in front of them, pick some paragraphs from here and there, and then what they are doing is just rewriting, and what they have done is nothing but just a modified summary of what is already existing. Now, this is not research. Just adding something to what is already there, or just changing the language of a few articles, or just writing a detailed summary or a critical analysis is not research. As I said, research calls for systematic investigation where you have to establish with facts, with evidence that what you say is genuine, and you reach new conclusions. Now, when you choose your research topic, you have to, broadly speaking, you choose a topic. It can be anything. Now, being a teacher of literature, I talk about literature, but this can be applied to anything else, social sciences, science, commerce, anything. You first choose your research topic in a very, very broad manner. That is, any topic that interests you, that you are interested in. Now, as I said earlier, number of students come, and it's very strange, it's very shocking also. We ask some students, what is your area of interest? Or what would you like to do What would you like to work on? What would you like to research on? And they have nothing to say, in the sense they have no area of interest. They don't even know what they want to work. They don't have, a prospective plan. And it's very funny, I say funny because this time we had a number of students who told us, give us any topic and we will work on it. Now, this is not working according to like or taste of your guide or the taste of the committee members or their likes and dislikes. The most important point here is you choose your research topic. You are going to work on it for 3 years, maybe 4 years. So take up a topic that interests you. Invest in that particular topic. Now, when you say you have to choose some topic, it means you should have read this, you should have read a lot, extensive reading on that particular aspect or on that particular genre. You keep reading. For example, you take poetry, you take drama or anything, maybe for, for commerce students, some financial aspect of some company, or for the geographical condition of some area, for the students of geography or sociological aspect, anything. So choose a research topic in a very broad manner. And then the second step is narrow it down. Narrow it down and you find your own segment of like. When I say niche, the word niche means breaking it into segments. As I just said, when you talk about poetry, okay, my interest is in poetry, but I cannot work extensively on all poetries, all kinds of poetries. What I have to do is generally I choose the topic poetry and then I narrow it down, maybe American poetry, maybe Indian poetry, maybe British or war poetry. So I narrow it down. After I narrow it down, for example, I take maybe Indian poetry. The third step is I try to identify a research problem there. Now, here problem does not mean a difficulty or a crisis. It only means problem. A research problem here is giving you a scope to work on. So when I come down to Indian poetry, I have to identify again a particular segment, a particular aspect that I need to work on. Maybe I can take pre-independent poetry or post-independent, like we say, no, post-colonial. Or maybe I can talk about Indianness in Indian poetry. Or maybe I can take about the portrayal of women in Indian poetry. So I have to, identify exactly what I'm working on, because again, even if I narrow it down to Indian poetry, I cannot work on the entire Indian poetry. So I identify exactly what I'm going to work on. And after I identify, I develop clear questions. Now, when I develop clear research questions, these questions should have an impact. It should be effective. In the sense, these research questions that I have developed in my mind should be researchable. Researchable, but I say researchable. Because again, I repeat, we are not going in for some kind of discovery. We are just going into research. Maybe a lot has already been done on it, but we are going to look at it from our perspective, our point of view. So the questions in my mind should be researchable. It should be focused. It should be specific. It should be complex. Complex in the sense it should call for a certain amount of difficulty. It should not be something very simple, which does not need any research work. It should be feasible. It should be possible. When we say feasible, it should be possible within our time frame. And most important, the research question that you are going to deal with, the research problem that you are going to deal with, should be relevant to the basic topic, your research topic. Next is you create a research design to answer them. So there are a number of questions, there are a number of research problems in your mind, and you have to frame a research design to answer them. Now, this research design could be nothing but methodology, which we will be dealing with. And there are different kinds of method. For example, you have the descriptive method, the analytic method, or the experimental, or you have the comparative method, the co-relational method. There are n number of methods. Now, your method should again be relevant to your research work. And here, the new research scholars, you don't need to worry, you don't need to get, be tensed, because you have to take the help of your, your supervisor, your research supervisor allotted to you. Will be relevant or ideal for your research. These things are, very clear in your mind. You begin to write your research proposal. Now, see, up to here is before you come for your CRC. That's a very strange and very pathetic. In fact, we start talking about research proposal after taking admission to PhD. But I'm very thankful to our college and to Dr. Waghmare sir for actually bringing about this. You can say kind of this is something like a course where you understand how to exactly write your research proposal. Now, many of you had come there for your interview, for your, the initial interview with maybe handwritten proposal, or some of you did not bring anything. A few of you, I remember, had a well written research proposal. Now, the second round of your interview will be actually when you have to come with your well designed research proposal. And when you come for the second interview, you have to definitely have this with you, that is your research proposal, which should be well written, because if it is not well written and if it does not fit in within the frame of research, it can be rejected and you will be asked to prepare another or maybe take another topic. So my suggestion to all of you, especially the students of 8th PET, is immediately you have to meet your research supervisors, because you can be called for your interview anytime. And you start with your research proposal, start writing your research proposal. Now, how to write your research proposal? That is nothing but your topic for your PhD. Now, be very specific about the topic that you are going to take. Now, for many of you, we have suggested, we have made corrections. So I believe that you have incorporated these corrections into your topic. Now, your topic, the topic that you take, should be suggestive of your intention. In the sense, your topic, the topic of your thesis, should suggest what you are going to work on, what you propose to work on, which means to say that your title should be relevant to the actual content of your research. Sometimes, we see that the content is different and the title is something very different. I've come across a couple of theses where the title is something different, and what is mentioned in the title was not actually there in the research or in the thesis. So you have to be very particular about your title. There is time in case you want to change, you want to modify your title, you can work on it, because once it is accepted now, then you cannot change it. So when you choose your title, just think about the fact that your title should actually reflect your intention and what actually you propose to present through your thesis. Secondly, it should be appealing to the entire academic fraternity. Now, here, when we talk about academic fraternity, it means everyone involved with academics. But you have to phrase, now here for you, academic fraternity is those members who actually take your interview. Now, your topic should be appealing to them. Very often what happens, your topic may be a repetition, or it's, repeated again and again, or maybe a lot of work has been done, or maybe there is nothing new in it. So then, the committee members will tell you that you have to change it, or you have to change the writer, or you have to, add some kind of theory. So that's why I say it should be appealing to the academic fraternity. When we say appealing, it should be attractive, and it should throw light on the fact that you are going to do something new. This will definitely be a good work, and it's going to add more to the research coffers. Now, when choosing your topic, you should see that your topic is unique. Now, when we say unique, in the sense it should be original. I just now told you, when you say original, don't cut, copy, and don't take 10 books in front of you and, just make a summary. Don't think that my research should be good. Many people feel, my research should be easy, my process should be easy. And let me take some work already done and just change a little bit of that angle, which is wrong. Your work should be unique in the sense you have to be original in your ideas. It should be meaningful. Don't just choose anything, but when you choose your topic for PhD, see that it contributes to the area of knowledge. It contributes to the area of research. After you have completed your PhD, you have to leave some scope for further research. Your work, the work that you have completed, should definitely be useful in the academic circle, that is for research scholars. But you leave some scope for the research scholars, for other scholars coming after you, to exactly pick up from where you have left, and they continue with their work. In the sense, your work should encourage, should motivate other research scholars. Your research work should be of importance to the academic field, and your research work should also be of importance to the social field. Very often, a question is asked: how is your research work going to benefit the society at large? How is your research work going to benefit the academic circle at large? Now, when you say academic circle, I already told you, your work should motivate others to continue from where you have stopped. But you have to also see to it that your work is socially relevant. It gives some kind of social impetus. It contributes towards the society. And the most important point here is, choose a topic of your choice and your interest. I just now told you there were some students who come up and say, Madam or Sir, give me any topic and I can work on it. Now, see, nobody is so knowledgeable, nobody is so informative to work on any topic. Even after we have put in so many years of teaching experience, we cannot work on anything and everything. If I have to write something, if I have to work on something, that particular topic should be of my choice and my interest. You can talk to your guide and tell your guide that I want to work on poetry, I want to work on drama, I want to work on novel, or I want to work on some critical theories. Try to convince your supervisor that this is my area of interest. Try to convince your guide saying, I can definitely do something good. The problem with the students is we don't read, and especially the last 2 years has gone into online teaching, virtual learning, social distancing. And what we have done is we have distanced ourselves from everything, from books, from knowledge, from information, from upgrading ourselves, from updating ourselves. We have not read any books. When I ask my students, have you read any books? It's very sad, it's very depressing. They say that we have not read any books. So it just goes to say that the last 2 years I have totally wasted. Now, if we keep reading, if we keep listening, if we keep watching, definitely you'll have something of your own choice or your own interest. And especially for me and for my research scholars, the research scholars working with me under my guidance, I always give them a chance to take a topic of their choice. Because At the end of it, the research journey should be a happy experience. It should not be stressful. It should be pleasurable. It should be enjoyable. And this is possible only when you take something of your own interest. When you work on something that you like, something of your choice, then you begin to give more and more, you begin to invest more and more into that particular learning, which becomes at the end of it a very, very, you can say, a very, very journey. So, my suggestion is you have to take something of choice and your own interest. Now, how to write your research synopsis or your proposal? Now, there is something called the problem statement, a statement of the problem. Now, as I said earlier, it's not a problem in the normal sense of language where you say problem is a conflict or a crisis. No, here you just mention your title. And when you mention your title, you have to point out to all those difficult words, all those, maybe unique words that you have used in your title, and try to make it very, very easy and very understandable to others. Maybe you say your audience or your readers. Because your title is something that links you, your work, with the readers and the reviewers. You have to be very, very clear. There should be a lot of clarity when you present your title. Because when you talk about your title, your title is the most important part of the entire study. It's the most vital and significant part of your entire thesis. And therefore, you have to communicate your problem or your problem statement in, in rather a very clear manner where you say there should be a lot of clarity, but concisely. Concisely is in very brief words, briefly. There's a common statement which says minimum words, but optimum effect. That is minimum words, but maximum effect. So use limited words, be clear, be focused, let everyone know what your thesis is going to be through your statement. Possible, try to make it rather attractive. Now, when I say attractive, I'm not talking about ornamental language, or I'm not talking about decorative language. When we talk about attractive, being attractive in research, it means being innovative, or making the reviewer or the readers realize that this work will be substantially good. This work will definitely have some novelty into it. Now, problem statement is nothing but the introduction to your thesis. What you plan to do in your thesis is your problem statement. Now, how do you present your problem statement? Now, present the problem. When you say your problem, it means what you choose to study and why. In the sense, if you're going to work on some particular novel, or you're going to work on some particular poem, you say why. Why did you choose it? What exactly did you choose? What exactly do you want to work on? And why did you choose it? There should be some reason. Exactly what are you going to prove through your problem? Secondly, after saying what and why, then you provide evidence. Now, when you provide evidence, there should be the support of reliable data. It should be authentic. It should be factual. Factual in the sense it should be supported by facts. And when you take any kind of data or you take any kind of reliable evidence to support your work, it should be cited. When I say it should be cited, you have to make a mention of it. We'll come to what citation is a little later. So the second part of your problem is you provide evidence with the help of reliable data and try to propose a solution. Now, to propose a solution is not in detail or not your final solution because you're still just going to begin to work. But what maybe you propose or what your solution would be, what you be, not in detail, but briefly, very concise. Now, why this is necessary? Because people can, what kind of solutions that you are going to drive. People can expect, your reviewer or maybe your the readers or maybe your guide or whoever it is, they will get a fair idea about what you plan to work on. Before you present, before you actually work on your problem statement, it's very necessary that I have used the word again, just like I said, research, I said rework, reconstruct, or you can say polish. If you are a student of language or literature, focus on the grammatic point of view. Error in grammar is not acceptable in research. Maybe otherwise it is, we say, okay, it is okay, but not in research. Your title has to be perfect, grammatically, language-wise, and therefore you have to focus on your facts, your language, and again the format. Every university has its own format and try to remain within the boundaries of your research format. So before you finalize or before you submit, rework, reconstruct, you can go on working on the statement so that there is no scope for any error, so that it is perfect. The next is scope and limitation. Now in our synopsis, in our proposal, we write the scope and limitations. Now scope is actually the limit or the extent up to which you plan to research. For example, I just said, you have taken poetry. But then, in your scope, you say that I will be working on this and this. I will be working on Indian poetry. And I will be taking this and this poet. Now, that is your scope and your limitation. You're going to say that I will be working only on these poets and only on their themes and nothing else. Now, that is the limitation. It's very necessary that you mention your scope and limitation because I told you knowledge has no limitations. But as research scholars, or when you prepare your thesis, you have to focus upon the scope. That is exactly up to what extent you're going to study, up to what extent you're going to research. And in addition to this, present your limitations. Now, the scope of your research will help you to actually be practical with your work and make it possible. It sets, it gives you boundaries within which you have to work. Now, when you come to limitation, we say scope and limitation, but I have added a word there, delimitation. Now, when you talk about limitation actually talks about something that is lacking or something that could have been better. Or, it talks about restrictions or conditions. Limitations also refer to maybe the shortcomings of a particular step. Now, for your information, shortcomings are conditions or influences which cannot be controlled by the researcher. When you say limitations, these are some, it can be, they can be different kinds of limitations. And this is something which is beyond the control of the researcher. Automatically, there comes about some kind of restriction on your methodology and your conclusion. And when we talk about delimitations, Delimitation talks about the choices that you have made. Now, limitations are what researcher cannot do because there is an outside element. But delimitation is what exactly the researcher will not do. I hope it's clear. Limitation is what the researcher cannot do because there are some outside, some, external elements. But delimitations are things that the researcher will not do because these elements from outside or out of the boundaries, they have set in their own limitations, that is, the research scholars. They decide exactly how much I'm going to work on. And when you present your scope and limitation, it automatically throws light on the in-depth study that you make, the extent to which you study. Your scope helps you to explore research questions. Your scope helps you to decide the parameters within which you will operate your research work. Now, parameters are nothing but it's a system or a set of conditions. It's very important that you mention your scope and limitations. Next, we come to the aims and objectives. That's something very, commonly written as aims and objectives. But the truth is, it should be aim and objectives. There should be one aim, but there can be many objectives to materialize or to reach that particular aim. But generally, what we see is everywhere they say aims and objectives. Anyway, so we take it as aims and objectives. Now, your aim is to focus on your research project or your thesis and what you intend to achieve. Your aim is what are you trying to prove? What are you focusing on? What is the purpose of your research? And what are you planning? What do you propose to achieve? This is your aim, which has to be very clearly mentioned. And your objectives is how are you going to achieve your aim? And that is objectives. The aim that you have mentioned has to be achieved. And to achieve your aim, you need objectives. Now, the difference between the aims and the objectives, research aim is relatively broad, whereas the objectives are very specific. The aims are broad. I intend to do this. I intend to achieve this. I intend to prove this. That is your aim. But very specifically, you start mentioning specifically how you are going to achieve that. Research aim focuses on long-term outcomes, whereas the objectives are immediate and they focus on short-term outcomes. How do I reach this aim immediately? How do I help realize my aim? Again, research aim can be written in a single sentence, or you can make use of a statement or maybe a very, very short paragraph for aim. But when you mention your objectives, you have to write it in the form of numbers, like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or maybe A, B, C, D. Aims, that is why I said you cannot have many aims. Aims will be single. So you write your aim in one statement or maybe a short paragraph, but you write your objectives as a numbered list. Now, when you talk about your research aims, or when you write your research aim, see to it that your research aim comprises of 3 parts. Now, when you talk about 3 parts, it talks about why is this research required? That is, what is the context of your work? Why is it necessary? What purpose is it going to serve? The second is, what is this research about? First is, why is it necessary? And second is, what exactly am I going to work on? And I say, what exactly I'm going to work on, it is my aim. And what do I intend to reach? What do I intend to achieve? And the third part is, how am I going to do it? How am I going to achieve it? And then comes your objectives. So here, the three things are very important, and that is context. That is the situation. Context means situation or the circumstances, your aim, and how you are going to achieve your aim. And when you say how you are going to achieve your aim, there you begin to introduce the different objectives. Now, this is about aim. Now, when you talk about research objective, it says be smart. When your objectives, be smart. By attitude of research, also be smart. And when you prepare your objectives, also be smart. Smart means be specific, be measurable, be achievable. Let it be relevant and let it be time bound. When we say specific, be focused. Let it be well defined. Be precise. Let there be clarity. Don't be confused. You should be very, very focused on exactly what you're going to do. Be focused. Let not your mind be, confused, or let it not wander. But just think about how well I can reach this, how well I can work upon this. The second is measurable. That is, you have to measure the progress, your progress, and determine how you can achieve what you wish to achieve. Now, this should be measurable. It should not go beyond your capacity. Whatever you try to do should be within your capacity. And that is why something which is within our capacity is measurable. Something which goes beyond our capacity is not measurable. So don't go to do something which is impossible, or rather, very complex. Simplify your work and try to determine how I can best achieve my action. Now, to achieve what you wish to, you have to have enough of resources, that is in the form of books or, primary source, secondary sources, which will help you to work on your project or your thesis. You need the support system and facilities. Now, when you talk about support and facilities, it talks about both, the physical support and the technical facilities. Everything should be available. Now, think about that also. If you are, you have a very good library, if you have a lot of, infrastructural facilities, or you have IT facilities, you have free Wi-Fi, then, those students are really advantaged. But suppose you belong to a rural area, you are working in a small college, you don't have Wi-Fi connections, you don't have enough of books. So try to think about, how well can I achieve this? What are the external factors that are going to contribute towards me achieving this? Be relevant in your plan. The action or the way you work towards your plan should be relevant. It goes to say that your plan and your action should be in coordination with each other. There should be a high level of compatibility between your plan and your action. And the last one is time bound. See, there is a time limit. Okay, the university is very generous. They have given you 6 years. But after that, what? And just because you have 6 years, it doesn't mean that you have to take 6 years or re-register and take another 1 year. You set your time. Say 3 years, say 4 years. Try to be very, very practical and think, can I complete my work within this stipulated time? Can I complete my work? Now, suppose you have kept a target of 3 years. Then you have to divide that 3 years again into segments. The initial, maybe 1 year goes into reading, goes into practical work, goes into collecting material. After that, goes into documentation, writing. Writing takes a lot of time. Of course, today nobody writes. Directly you type on your laptop. But that also takes a lot of time. your references, your bibliography, making it relevant. That takes again a lot of time. So you have to be very, very smart in dividing your time, your stipulated time, into segments, and just assign, for each work, for each task, you give specific time so that your work is completed within that time frame. So when you talk about objectives, it says be smart. When you prepare your aim and objectives, there are certain words. Only some people say, I wish to, I can, I will, I would, I might. Now, this planning and I can and I may, there is no scope for possibility or probabilities. There is no scope for doubt. When you talk about aim and objectives, it means understanding, then applying what you have understood. After application, try to analyze that. After analyzing, try to synthesize. Synthesize means nothing but breaking down into small units. And after that, you evaluate. Evaluate is to judge. Now, here there are few terms given, and these are the terms that you have to use in your research work throughout. Not only for your proposal or your aims and objectives, but throughout, for few words. You can just go through it. For example, you say, I propose to interpret, to identify, and always add the word to. Don't say, I will interpret, I will analyze, I will propose. Now, this is wrong. These statements are wrong. Your objective should be like this: to interpret, to apply, to demonstrate, to examine, to verify. So you can just make a note of these, terms, and these terms have to be used when you make, in future also, when you write, when you prepare your thesis, when you write your chapters also, these words are, generally they are known as research words. Now let's come to research methodology. You have to specifically mention what procedure you're going to use, the technique that you're going to use, the tools that you're going to use. Now, see, for every faculty, the procedure, the technique, the tools are different. You have to specify the methodology that you are going to use to identify your problem, to select your problem, the process of your work, to analyze. Now, normally when you say, when you talk about research methodology, your research methodology has to answer two questions. And the two questions are, the first one is, how was your data collected, or how did you generate your data? Now, how? Now, this talks about research methodology. So I will come to that later. So what was the process? What was the procedure of collecting data? How did you generate your data? This is the first question. And the second question is, how was it analyzed? First you collect and then you analyze. When you answer these two questions, automatically you get your methodology. How did you collect your data? If you just collected your data through the library, or you compared two different textbooks, then if you compared two different textbooks, it's a comparative methodology. If you just took some books, you read it and you interpreted it, then it's an interpretive methodology. So when you answer the first question, how did you collect your data? And the second one, how did you analyze your data? Then it automatically throws light on the methodology that you're going to use. Many people get confused, and it's very strange. Some people, methodology use, they'll write 5 and 6 methodology. I used descriptive, I used analytic, I used comparative, I used this, I used that. How can you use so many different methodologies? If you say comparative, it is understood. You have compared two different books, or two different writers, or two different works. And when you say compare, then automatically it means you read those books, you went through a descriptive process, you analyzed them, you broke them down into small units, that is synthesizing. And of course, lastly, you evaluated them. So just mention, a single methodology. Don't go for 3 and 4 methodologies. This is normally done by students of arts faculty. I use descriptive, interpretative, and comparative, and so many different things. So answer these questions. How was the collection done and how was it analyzed? And you reach your type of research methodology. Now, if you look at the type of research methodology, there are a number of methodologies. I have made quite a lot here. Just like to throw a little light, maybe one sentence each on each of the methods. That's type of method. Now, the basic two methods are qualitative research and quantitative research, which I will talk to you in detail. The next is survey, and survey research is nothing but a collection of information for sampling. As I told you, different faculties will follow different types of research method. But as research scholars, you at least need to know what are the different types of method. Or you come to the experimental method, which has to remain within scientific research design. You cannot go beyond this research format. Or you have again the scientific method where you apply a particular method. Now, this is very useful for the students of science. Now, there is another method known as the observation research, where you gather data by watching people, by recording different things about their characteristic features, or even observing events. You have interviews. Now, I don't need to tell you what interviews is. Making a research or coming to some kind of conclusion through interviews. Case study talks about exploring an event or a phenomenon in detail. Then you have the focus group. Focus group is nothing but taking about 8 to 10 people in a room, and this is normally done for management studies or market research. And these people are given a kind of feedback form, and they are asked to give their feedback on a particular product or a particular process. Now, this is again good for the management students. As I told you earlier, descriptive research is nothing but describing the characteristic features of a phenomenon. Or you have ethnographic research. Now, ethnography is a branch of anthropology where again it studies people, their behavior, their mannerism, in short, their characteristic features. Exploratory research talks about investigating into a problem where the problem is not clearly defined. Now, if the problem was clearly defined, you don't need to investigate. Then you have content analysis, which is a study of documents and communication artifacts. That is study made through pictures, maybe audio, videos, etc. You have action research. Now, action research is especially good for students of social sciences, where they try to, the research scholar, through his work, tries to seek a transformation, tries to bring about a change through his action. Or you have the grounded theory. The grounded theory is an inductive method for conducting qualitative research. But this can be done only through the use of some kind of theory, that is applying theories. Then you have the longitudinal study, where longitudinal study is nothing but putting several years into observation of the same subject. And for this, it's not days, but maybe you have to spend a number of years. You keep observing the pattern of that same particular subject over and over and over again. You talk about basic research. Basic research can also be called as pure research or fundamental research. And this is improving scientific theories. Or you have meta-analysis, which is nothing but a statistical analysis of data, or cross-sectional, where you observe collected variables versus predefined subsets. Then you have the evaluation research, where evaluation nothing is nothing but an assessment. Or your analytic is, analyzing something or bringing together, you can say maybe subtle details, so that you get some kind of provable assumptions. Then you have text mining. Text mining is also very interesting, where it's a process where you transform unstructured text into structured forms. This helps you to discover hidden patterns. Now, this particular text mining is also known as knowledge discovery database from the text. Then you have maybe problem oriented, which, it talks about some particular problem or how you study that from a particular perspective and how that perspective is relevant to your problem. So these are the different types of research methods. Now, those who are listening to me, you don't need to get confused, because you are students or you are scholars from different faculties. And you have to choose your method which is relevant to your work, or which is relevant to the faculty that you belong to. I was just trying to talk to you. Now, in addition to this, there are again a number of different methods also. Let's talk about research hypothesis. Now, hypothesis is something very, very important. It's a very significant part of research. Now, a hypothesis, in your synopsis, you have to present your hypothesis. And what is your hypothesis? It's nothing but a statement which talks about your research question and the results that you expect at the end. Now, see, remember, when you talk about hypothesis, this is pre-hypothesis. This is the hypothesis that you expect after your work. Now, there can be a change in your hypothesis also. Now, this is especially a change, especially comes about for students of science. It does not come, maybe, with students dealing with finance also, economic problems also. But normally for students of literature, there does not come about a change in the hypothesis normally. So when you talk about this is your pre-research work hypothesis, now this is just a statement of what you expect at the end of your work. And when you talk about or when you present your hypothesis, see that it is specific, see that it is testable, because the authenticity of your hypothesis can be challenged. And see what prediction, when you say, you're talking about the future, or you're giving a hypothesis today, and that is something that you expect maybe after 3 years. So it's a kind of prediction. It is a kind of talking about the future. So be very careful when you present your hypothesis. Now, when you formulate your hypothesis, when you present your statement of hypothesis, just look at these questions. Is the language of your hypothesis statement clear and focused? Is there clarity? Are you focused? Or have you deviated? Do not deviate. Be focused. Think about your work. Is your hypothesis relevant to your topic? Your hypothesis should be in coordination with the work, with your topic that you are doing. Is your hypothesis testable? And if it is testable, how? That's what I said. Your hypothesis can be challenged. And if it is challenged, how you are going to justify? What are the tools, or what are the methods, or how best are you going to justify what you say is authentic, what you say is genuine? Think about different explanations. If somebody asks you a question on your hypothesis, think about different angles. How I can explain, my hypothesis in the best possible way. So you have to explore, you have to search. does it include, dependent and independent variables? Variables are nothing but elements or features which can change during the course of time. Okay, variables, for example, you talk about a writer. That writer must have given an interview, say 5 years back, and you're quoting that interview. But in another 3 years, maybe he changes his opinion. So when he changes his opinion, automatically your hypothesis or that variable, that factor is also liable to change. So think about that also. If it is liable to change, you have to make that change in your head. And can you control variables without disturbing the ethical standards? Okay, pre submission or pre work, you have given your hypothesis, and at the end of 3 years or at the end of 4 years, you think that you want to change your hypothesis a little bit. That is why we use the word manipulate. Now, manipulate is not in the negative sense or in the derogatory sense. Here, manipulation means to control or to handle. Can I handle this change? Can I bring about a little changes? You can bring about changes, but see to it that you don't disturb the research standards, or you don't disturb the ethical standards of your work. Don't compromise on your work while controlling your variables. You can control, you can manipulate in the positive way, but see that you don't, in any way, you don't hamper the ethical standards of your work. Coming to the significance of the study, what is the significance of my particular work? How is it important? Now you have to you have to present a written statement which actually explains why the study is necessary, why this work is needed. You have to justify how your work is going to impact your particular field, the field of research, maybe scholars, maybe the society, as I told you earlier. You have to justify how your work is really significant. When you say that, you have to talk about how you are going to contribute towards adding more knowledge, how people are going to be benefited by your work. Now you have to convey through your synopsis, through your proposal, why your topic is important and why you have taken this. And when you say why it is important, when you write this statement, think about two perspectives. The first one is, what is the general contribution of your work? This particular work, how is it going to generally contribute? In the broader sense, what kind of contribution it's going to make in the field of research. And the second one, specific contribution, that is to your particular field. How it is going to, your particular field, in a sense, maybe it can be language, it can be social sciences, it can be literature. That is a general contribution, maybe to the society. But specifically, if you have worked on poetry, how did it add more research knowledge to the field of poetry? Or maybe drama or whatever it is. So when you prepare your statement proving how your work is significant, take these two aspects. That is the general contribution and your specific contribution. Coming to review of literature. Now there you have to write a paragraph which says review of literature. Now this review of literature is nothing but literature already present in the work that you are going to do. I told you earlier, the work that you're going to do is not a discovery. Discovery is something new. It's already there. So somebody, at least one person or a couple of people or maybe a number of people may have already written something on this particular topic, maybe through different angles, different perspectives. It must have been published previously. And their work, their literature, it's going to add a little more to your existing knowledge. You are going to take a little from what is already there, the existing literature, and you're going to add this in your work. Now, normally when you say literature, review of literature, this is nothing but kind of scholarly papers, that you find in magazines or maybe in journals. They come out in the form of articles or maybe presentations, publications, and these sources can form your secondary sources. When you write your bibliography, you can use them as your secondary sources. Now, again, this review of literature can be evaluative or it can be a systematic review. It can be explore. It can be instrumental. Now, just devote one paragraph or maybe half a page and say what literature you have found that has been already published on the work that you are going to do. And you have to cite from where you have got this, maybe some book or some maybe website or whatever, and what that particular author or writer talks about this particular issue. It's very necessary that you have to give the review of literature so that a general understanding is got as to what work has been done. Maybe it's from a different angle, no doubt, but a general idea of what work has already been done. Then you come to your chapter scheme. Now, when you give your chapter scheme, that is in your synopsis, you propose the chapter scheme that you're going to use in your thesis. Now, chapter scheme is nothing but a logical connection from one chapter to the second, from second to the third. And see to it that there should be a kind of flow, a logical connection. Now, remember, I have used the word tentative. This is tentative. Tentative in the sense it can change. You can change. It is acceptable. In your synopsis, you give, even sometimes you don't need to mention, suppose you are confused, you don't need to mention the title. You can just say introduction, chapter 2, chapter 3, maybe chapter 4, chapter 5 is conclusion. It is acceptable. In your thesis, your final thesis, you can actually write down your title properly. But it is accepted or it is expected that you provide a tentative scheme of chapters. And then just say, very briefly say what you propose to do in your introduction, your second chapter, what you propose to do, and so on. And in your conclusion is your finding. Now, in your synopsis, in your conclusion, you just give a couple of points, not more than that, because you still have to work. You still have to, go through the process of research. This is just your proposed work. So here, your concluding chapter in your synopsis should not be 1 page and 2 pages. It should just be maybe a very, very small paragraph, or maybe just 2-3 lines, or maybe 2-3 points. And that is something you expect to see in your conclusion. Now, it is expected that, a minimum of 3 chapters, minimum. Your research work should at least comprise of 3 chapters. And when I say 3 chapters, it means introduction. The second chapter is the content, that is the body of your work, and the third is conclusion. Now, this is the minimum, but it can go up to 4, 5, 6, and even more than that, but not less than 3. Now, ideally, your chapter scheme should look like this. Now, look at this figure here, the diagram here. This is an inverted pyramid, or you can say an inverted carrot. Now, see, if you look at the top, it's very broad, and then as you go down, it becomes narrow and narrow. Now, your chapter scheme or your total research work should be like this, On the top, it should be very broad. You take, your introduction should be very broad. You talk about everything. You talk about your topic from all angles, from different perspectives. And then when you come down to the second chapter, you actually talk about the text that you have taken and actual contents, the context, how the material that you have taken is going to act or is going to help you towards your work, or what exactly you propose to do. Your third chapter becomes more narrow. It is the actual work that you have taken. I told you earlier, introduction is broad. When you say poetry, poetry is very broad. You start with the definition of poetry. But when you come to your actual work, that is what exactly you have taken. You cannot work on such a broad aspect. You have to limit. We saw that, no? Scope and limitations. So what exactly have you taken? What work have you have taken? What aspect have you taken? How many books you have taken? Or what is the, who's the writer or who are the writers? So it becomes narrow. And then it becomes narrower, that is your findings. What are your findings? This is, comparatively very small. Your findings and your findings are your findings. Take 10 findings from different sources and put it as your findings. Or even if it's just one finding, it's enough. But let that be genuine. Let that be authentic. And then finally, your conclusion. Conclusion comes down very narrow. It comes down like a point. And here you conclude and you give further recommendation. So your chapter scheme or even your entire thesis should be like an inverted pyramid. Many of the research students, they don't know how to start writing or what is a chapter scheme. Now this is called a blueprint of your research work. Just like when you start with constructing a house, before starting with the construction, you have a blueprint. Blueprint is nothing but a design, a map or a graph, you can say, of what the building will look like, how your house will look like. Now, this inverted pyramid will be just like that. You can just write down, the first place is very broad. So you just write down the general introduction. The second one, what all I'm going to apply, what theories I'm going to apply. Who are the, same kind of writers, the contemporary writers, the features, the characteristic features that I'm going to work on. Third one, take your actual work. That is your scope and limitation. Don't go beyond that. And your findings. During the course of work, what were your findings? And finally, how do you conclude? That is now your fourth and fifth chapter is your entire work. Because the first, the second, and the third here is already there. Introduction we take from some book, we take from the internet. Preliminaries are also there. Your actual work also is there. You take 5 books, you get a lot of material. Now the fourth chapter and the fifth chapter is your actual research, and you have to focus on these 2 chapters. Many of us, what we do, we write 100 pages on introduction, 50 pages on the second chapter, another 100 pages on the third chapter, and fourth and fifth chapter, 3 pages, 4 pages, which is wrong. Your entire work is your fourth chapter, your fifth chapter. So from the beginning, you have to concentrate on what your findings will be, what your conclusion will be, and how and what you are going to recommend. Now, when you collect your data, again, I repeat, for students of literature, you can collect it through, your primary sources. But here I'm talking about general, for all the students. Now, there are 6 significant ways of data collection. The first one is interviews, through interviews, then through questionnaires and surveys, through observations, through a number of documentations that are already there or through records available, maybe in different libraries or different offices. Then you have a focus group. Now, a focus group is nothing but group interviews. For example, there is a problem. So you take a small number of people. Now, the small number of people should be people of similar kind, Maybe the age group is similar, or maybe they have some kind of common traits, common similar traits, common experience. For example, you're talking about how to improve language of the students. So you take a particular class. Now, for example, you take class 5, the 5th standard students. So they belong to that focus group, and that is they belong to the age of maybe 10, 11. Their social background can be different, their family background can be different, but there is something similar in the students, and that is they are in the same class. They belong to this common group where they share almost the same experiences and trait, and that is called a focus. And here another thing which is quite new to you maybe is oral histories. Now, oral history is nothing but a method of conducting historical research. And this historical research is conducted through recorded interviews. Now, here the narrator, the person who's talking, the person who's giving the interview, he talks about his personal experiences of some particular or significant events. Now, it's definitely a spoken account. And so, because it is a spoken account, it talks about his personal opinion. So, these are the vital methods of data collection. As I told you earlier, I will talk to you about qualitative and quantitative focus on this. Now, when you say quality, you say like how or why or what is it quality, and when you say quantity you say how much, because quantity is something that can be measured. A qualitative method of research is considering factors which are not numerical. Don't take numbers here. You can go for interviews, you can go for focus groups that I just spoke about, you can go for observations or even oral histories. Now here you ask a question, why? And if you can answer the question why, it means you are taken up qualitative method of collection. And then you have the quantitative method where, as I said earlier, the quantitative method answers your question, how much? When you say how much, it talks about something, measurable variables. So it deals with things that can be counted. So here you can go for your questionnaire, you can go for surveys, you can go for documentations, and of course, records. Now, the difference, or you can say that what are the different approaches of quantitative method? Now, here you have descriptive. Now, descriptive is nothing but describing as I told you earlier, the characteristic features of a person or a phenomenon, and then you answer like what, when, how, etc. Now, correlational can be, it's a non-experimental method, which is a study of two variables. I already told you what experimental is. Now, quasi-experimental is manipulating independent variables. And when you talk of qualitative research methods, you have ethnography. Now, as I told you earlier, ethnography is a branch of anthropology trying to understand people and their lives. Or you have another method here, which is called grounded theory. Now, grounded theory, you can observe participants, you can take their interview, you can go for documents or the collection of artifacts. Now, artifacts are nothing but objects made by human beings which focus on culture or history, historical significance. And phenomenology is nothing but the philosophy of experience. That is the lived experience of human beings. Now, coming to your bibliography, which is a very, very important aspect of your work. Now, what is bibliography? Bibliography is a list of books or a list of any references that you have used during the course of your work. Now, you use a number of books, maybe books, you use the website, you use maybe secondary books like reference books, etc. But this, you have to bifurcate this. For example, you say bibliography, selected bibliography, and works consulted. Now, it is not cited, it is not taken, it is consulted because it refers to the books, it refers to the works, or whatever you have consulted, but you have not used it. You have not used it anywhere. It's just a general, maybe you just made a general reading of it. So when you use such books, when you mention such books, you say selected or consulted. The next is works cited or literature cited or references, which talks about the books that you have actually used. some some statements, some quotes that you have actually taken. Now, there is a difference. Normally we don't make this difference. This is the expected, or the expectation, research expectations, that works consulted is different from works actually cited. Now, bibliography should always be at the end of your proposal. Now, when you talk about your thesis, it should be at the end of the thesis. There is a difference between bibliography and reference. Reference comes at the end of each chapter. Okay, reference comes at the end of. Now, in your synopsis, you don't need to make a note of references, bibliography. But when you write your thesis, after each chapter, you have to mention reference. And when you mention reference, you have to mention whatever you have used in the chapters. You can say reference, or you can say just works cited. Okay. Now divide your bibliography in this manner. You can say the primary sources. The primary sources includes your textbooks, your autobiographies, memoirs. Memoirs are nothing but biographies, government documentations, or speech material, or interviews. Now, when you say speech material or interviews, in the first person, okay, not in this, or if it comes in the form of a reference or somebody else using it, and then it comes as secondary. But if you're taking a direct audio speech, a video speech from that person you're working on, it comes under primary source. Your secondary sources talks about reference books, or it talks about monographs. Now, monographs are detailed written study of a single specialized aspect, or a single specialized study. You can have journal articles, you can take from newspapers, you can take from magazines, you can take anything from online resources, or you can even go for documentaries. Documentary films are there, or there are so many other things. Now, this forms your secondary sources. In addition to this, you can also add, actually, I forgot to add here, you can say primary sources, secondary sources, and the third one will be online sources. There are different terms. You can say websites, or you can say bibliography. Like bibliography, you can say bibliography. Bibliography is things that you have taken from the website. Now, coming to the next one, the layout or the font and the structure prescribed by our university. Now, see, maybe different universities have different layouts, but our university expects the font in Times New Roman, size 12, and spacing 1.5. So go for this, because if you don't follow this, maybe they will ask you to rewrite again. When you cite, as I told you, when you make a note of your references or your bibliography, now it is known as citation style sheet. They ask you which style sheet are you using. So you have to use the latest style sheet. I think the 8th edition. Now, normally, as students of language and literature, or maybe even for humanities, we use the MLA style sheet. Now, the MLA style sheet is known as MLA is the Modern Language Association. Now, I have given you below an example from a website also, and this is how you write the reference, or how you quote. If you take this MLA style sheet, the latest edition, you can order your books, because you have to follow the latest style. It tells you, how to write your primary, your secondary source, how to write. Everything is given in detail, and you have to make use of it. Or normally, students of psychology or education, they follow the APA style, which is American Psychological Association. And here again, there is this one example given which you follow. In addition to this, there are different citations style sheets. For example, you have the Chicago citation, you have the Harvard style citation, the Columbia Guide, I think it's the Columbia Guide to Online Style. Then you have the Council of Biology Editors. Council of Biology Editors, students of science especially. or you have the AMA style sheet, that is the American Psychological Association. So now here, for students, for scholars of different faculties, please confirm with your guide, your supervisor, which style to follow. As I told you, students of language and literature has to follow the MLA style sheet, and that is the latest edition. So maybe students, if there are some students of commerce or science, you can please ask your guide in charge, your supervisor in charge, what citation style sheet to be. So this is all I have to say about preparing a research proposal. And whatever I have said, all these points have to come. All these points should be there in your research proposal. If you need, if there is a demand from one model research proposal, language and literature, or maybe if you want from social sciences also, so that you can go through it and you can prepare your synopsis in a very, you can say in a very well designed, in a very systematic manner. I hope I'm clear. I hope you have understood. And once again, I thank the organizers for giving me this chance to express my opinion to you. Thank you so much. एकच minute, 1 minute.
So can I ask a question?
Yes, yes, yes,
I have a doubt, ma'am.
yes.
For researchers of English literature, which methods are used specifically for these researchers?
Yeah, I told you, I just now told you, you have, normally we use interpretative method, analytic method is there. If you're comparing between two different writers, or you use the comparative method, there are different kinds of method. I can share this PPT with you also. It is best before, like maybe as research scholars, you are still beginners. So I think it is best you talk to your research supervisor, because if you're see, for example, you're talking about science, it will be something more of like exploring something. So you better you talk. I have given a list of the methods, research method. I think maybe more than 15 to 20. So you can go through it and just see which is most relevant for your subject. If you are a student of literature, as I said, your descriptive method is there, interpretation is there, even exploration. If you're working on something like spy work or thriller or maybe cyberpunk and all that, you can go for exploration. So,
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
yeah. Sir. Yes. In your synopsis or for your final work? A review of literature, even if you mention just 2 or 3, it is more than enough. Even if you just mention the works of
Sir, shall I ask the question, sir?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir, I have posted the question. I wanted to ask it for the doctoral thesis, not
Yes,
for a proposal. Yes,
just
madam.
tell me, your question is regarding the review of
Review
literature.
of literature. Madam, the question is literature review of how many books, journal, papers, or articles should be taken up for the doctoral thesis.
That is, you're saying to be mentioned in your thesis, no? Right?
Yes, yes, madam. Yes.
Ah. No, not at all. See, if you're going to write one chapter, if you're going to give so many, if you're going to give a list, no, so what is left in that? What novelty will be left in your work? you're going to say that 20 people have worked on this, 30 people have worked on this, then what are you going to prove? Everything is already worked upon. So try to give, even if you give, see in our literature, language and literature, sometimes we just give 3, sometimes only 2, sometimes 3, 4 is also more than enough. There is no rule as such that you have to use so many. Just like I told you, chapters, you can have minimum 3 chapters, maximum there is no limit. We have seen people even writing 8 to 10 chapters. So there is nothing, no specific rule that you have to use this and this. You can go for 2, 3, 4 also, not an issue.
Thank you very much, madam. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
First of all, thanks a lot. It's a wonderful session, and because lots of queries whenever you went through one session by session, like about since beginning. I remember my topic in front of me, and I started find out what will be the next one to me. So it's a really wonderful, and definitely it will helpful for all of us. Ma'am, just I have one query regarding the synopsis. Means how is there limitations of pages, number of pages for this now? Now we have to
Nothing
submit.
like that. See, there is nothing, no limitation of pages. Only the points that I spoke. All these points should be there in your synopsis.
Okay.
So if you include all these points also, your synopsis will not go more than 8 to 9 pages.
Yeah.
And remember, whether your synopsis or whether your thesis, at the end of it, it's not the quantity, it's not the number of pages that is important, it's the quality that is important. Many students, as I told earlier, they say, माझं introduction 100 pages झाले, माझं second chapter 50 pages झाले. They're going by pages. Quality is important, quantity is not important. I have seen a student who, of course, the student was a student of psychology. He completed his thesis just 40 pages, only 40 pages. And he said the same thing. One committee member said only 40 pages, maybe that committee member was going by quantity. And this boy said, I have nothing else to say. Whatever is there is innovative, it's a novelty, it's something new into the field of psychology, and whatever is there, I have put it in 40 pages. You either accept it or you reject it. And it was accepted, and he was given his PhD degree. So not that I'm saying you write only 40 pages. What I'm trying to say is quality is important. Okay.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
whatever I have said, if you have made a note of it, fine. If you have not made a note of it, I will, maybe tomorrow I will give all the points that have to be included in your synopsis. I will give it to Waghmare sir. He will post it to you. See that all these points come in your synopsis.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you so
Don't be,
much, ma'am.
Yes. Yes. It's a really helpful for us, right?
thank you. Yes, any more questions? Any doubts?
Okay. Should the conclusion always support the hypothesis? Ram Bhosale is asking question.
Yes. Should the conclusion always support the hypothesis? Yes. But as I told you, sometimes no. Sometimes because you have null hypothesis also, but this comes in science. But when you talk for especially students of language, literature, and even social sciences, normally your hypothesis and your conclusion should match. It should match.
Yes.
But then if it doesn't match, then it's another thing altogether. It doesn't match. When it doesn't match, when some kind of experimentation is done, when some kind of experiment is done in the laboratory, and then you cannot manipulate with your results, your conclusion. So then maybe a null hypothesis or maybe something different from your hypothesis comes, but it's okay. Your hypothesis, as I told you, was something that you proposed at the beginning of your work. But in the due course, your hypothesis changed. It's okay, it's acceptable. But normally it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
मॅडम खूप खूप थँक्यू. आजचं सेशन खूप छान झालं. सिनॉप्सिस लिहिण्यापूर्वी आम्हाला नेमकी एक आयडिया येणं अपेक्षित होतं, त्यामुळे आम्ही वाघमारे सरांना विनंती केली होती की सिनॉप्सिसवर एखादं लेक्चर व्हावं, आणि या लेक्चरला तुम्ही आलात हे आमचं भाग्य आहे. त्याबद्दल खूप खूप धन्यवाद.
तुमचं तर सिनॉप्सिस अप्रतिम होते सर. Yours was very good.
Yes.
And
आधी मला बरेचसे doubts आहेत.
No, there's some of you
एक
like
doubt आहे.
Patil sir hote kiwa there was Swati Patil was there. There were few of them who really maybe because you got good guidance, but there were other students. It's not their fault. Probably they didn't know who their guides were, and many of them came with no synopsis. Many of them came with handwritten synopsis. Now this is not accepted. It's okay. Now when you are called the next time, you will have to face another research committee where your now that will be final. That's why I said work on your title, finalize your title, because once it is accepted there, then you cannot change. Now that you have your guides, all of you have been allotted a guide. Meet your guide. Don't say I don't know who my guide is. The name of your guide, the name of the college, and the telephone number is given. Contact your guide. If you want to change your topic for CRC meeting, you can change. There is no problem. But now, whatever you face, the committee that you face, your title will be final, and then you cannot change. If you change again, even one single alphabet, from if you have to change to an, or from if you have to change to the, again you have to wait for 6 months for the second research committee, and your time gets wasted. So that is why I said when you prepare your title, reframe it, reconstruct it, keep on working till it is final. You show your research supervisors, you can show somebody else also, and just see that you do a good job.
काही जणांना मराठीत काही प्रश्न विचारायचा असेल तर तुम्ही विचारू शकता.
मॅडम एक
जस्ट बी
शंका होती,
फ्रँक.
विचारू
हा
का आपली
विचारा
परवानगी
सर.
असेल तर?
हो यस सर विचारा.
हा सर विचार.
मॅडम आपण चॅप्टर स्कीम बद्दल आता जी माहिती दिली, आता पहिलं प्रकरण आम्हाला लक्षात आलं नेमकं काय करायचं, पण पुढची प्रकरण आता पुढे काय करणार आहे हे लिहिताना आम्हाला अडचणी येणार नाहीयेत का? कारण अजून पुढे काय काय करायचं यात आमच्या कन्सेप्ट पूर्ण क्लिअर नाहीये. मग आता चॅप्टर स्कीम मध्ये नेमकं आम्ही काय करणार आहे हे ऑथेंटिकपणे लिहिता येईल का?
कोण बोलायला लागलात का?
Well, sir, I just
बोलायला
gave
लागला.
a
Mute
brief
करा, please.
idea, and that chapter scheme was for actually all the students. Particularly language, kiva particularly
Right.
social sciences साठी नव्हते. It was generally for everybody. So what you can do is you can meet your research supervisor. You can meet me also. म्हणजे you means not you, anybody. You can meet your respective guide. You can meet me. You can meet any other committee members. And definitely, I think anybody will work. There is. Don't be confused. Don't be like jumbled. Don't think it is difficult. It's very easy. Only thing, you have to go as per your title. So the first one is very broad, and the second one, then you begin to narrow down your scope, because finally you have to concentrate on your work. So the second chapter is something between the first chapter and the third chapter. From third chapter onwards, you actually begin to focus on your work. That's it.
ओके, थँक्यू मॅडम.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
ओके.
Good evening, ma'am.
हा येस मॅम. कोळेकर मॅडम विचारा.
Thank you so much, ma'am. All the ideas regarding the synopsis are really very clear now. And we are really grateful, ma'am, to have your valuable words. And thank you so much, Waghmare sir, for having us, Annie John's ma'am's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
थँक्यू. ओके कन्क्लुजन करायचं.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes, ma'am.
मॅडमचं ऐकतच बसावं असं वाटतं. पण आपण
Okay.
आणखी त्यांना गायडन्ससाठी आम्ही वारंवार भेटणारच आहोत.
आता
ओके,
Next.
थँक्यू.
हा येस
Excuse me, ma'am. A last question. Excuse me.
येस मॅम.
Yes,
आस्क प्लीज आस्क. खरटमल
Ma'am,
मॅम.
even yes,
Yeah.
sir. Even if our guide is different, can we take your guidance within these 3 years? Because we will be really fortunate to have your guidance.
No problem. You can come anytime. Always welcome.
Definitely ma'am, definitely. That's why we have started this course.
You can come to me. You can meet Waghmare sir. You can meet anybody. You can meet any of the guides. I don't think anybody will say no. If
Yes.
they say
Okay,
no,
ma'am.
to tell me. I will tell them to tell me. Don't worry.
Okay, ma'am. It's so kind of you. Thank you, ma'am.
Seema. I think Seema is speaking. No?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Seema Jogdan, your student. Yes, ma'am.
So don't worry. Just be very, and I said no, just enjoy this research journey. Don't be
Yes, ma'am.
confused. Don't be wondering what to do next. You have a doubt anytime. You can meet anybody and you can clear.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
ओके
नमस्ते मॅम. नमस्ते मॅम,
हा
ज्योती वंजारी.
येस मॅम.
हा बोल ना बोल.
हा हा कॉंग्रॅच्युलेशन मॅडम, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल.
थँक्यू.
हा खूप छान माहिती दिलात मॅडम. ऑलरेडी खूप कन्फ्युज होतो आम्ही. खूप छान सेशन झालं. धन्यवाद मॅडम.
Actually, you should thank Waghmare sir. PET 7 students, they were not so fortunate. You are fortunate before your final synopsis, that is, we have arranged this and it's really good, so you can do some good job actually. That confusion will go from your mind.
हो हो नक्कीच. वाघमारे सरांचे पण खूप खूप अभिनंदन.
थँक्यू.
धन्यवाद.
ओके.
Just attend all the sessions so that you will be benefited, all of you.
Yes.
ओके मॅम. ओके, थँक्यू.
So finally, at the outset, I extend my gratitude to Dr. Annie John ma'am for the detailed insight on how to write PhD thesis or a PhD research proposal or a synopsis. So as you put forward all chronological order of PhD research proposal in a very comprehensive manner, ma'am. So these are title of the research. Second one is problem statement or a thesis statement. Third one is scope, limitations and delimitations. Fourth one is aim and objectives. Fifth one is research methodology. Sixth, research methods, tools and techniques for data collection. Seventh, research hypothesis. Eighth, significance of the work. Ninth, review of literature. 10th, chapter schemes. 11th, bibliography, references, work cited and even bibliography. 12th, layout of the thesis or research proposal, fonts and structure. And 13th, citation or a style sheet like MLA, APA, Chicago and even our styles. So you also talked about blueprint of the thesis or a dissertation. Thank you very much for being here and discussing with us. Thank you very much, ma'am. And thank you all participants.
Thank you.
Okay, we will begin the next session.
Thank you, sir.
Don't leave now. We will begin the next session. The next session will be the resource person of next session is Gadwal sir from Solapur Social College. He will be talking on the hypothesis, formation of hypothesis and sampling. So please be present here. Don't leave. He will be here within few minutes. चलो.
मी बघत नाही.
नाही तोपर्यंत थोडं थांब ते घेऊन जाईल.
सुहास कोकरे कोणाकडे करायला PhD?
सुहास कोकरे माहित आहे का तुम्हाला?
शिक्षकांना कुठेतरी येतात.
माझ्याकडेच येणार होता त्यांनी.
घेऊ नका त्याला.
मी घेतलेलं नाही.
मला एक पोरगा आहे ते. सुहास कोकरे हे आतिश लकडेचा मेहुणा आहे. बहिणीला दिले.
आतिश लकडेचं का? काय झालं? मला फोन केला का?
कोणाकडे गेलाय मग ते? कोणाकडे गेले
त्यांनी का? राम राजा मोठे. मी घेतलं नाही त्याला.
तुमच्याकडे कोण आता?
कोळेकर मॅडम, अलका कोळेकर, प्रभाकर कोळेकरची बायको. वंजारी मॅडम म्हणून आहेत.
ते कुठले आहेत?
ते शिक्षक आहेत. साधे, एकदम व्यवस्थित, चांगले, म्हणजे असं हे नाही, असं गोबी कुठाही नाही.
त्यांचा टॉपिक कधी फायनल होणार? कोर्सवर पास झाल्यावर?
टॉपिक आता होईल की आता.
कोर्सवर कधी यांच्या?
काइंडली join the session.